black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Over 40 years ago, a Senate Select Committee chaired by Senator Frank Church, Democrat from Idaho, was convened to investigate the intelligence activities of the CIA, FBI, IRS, and the NSA.
In this, our third installment in this series, we're looking into the Church Committee's hearing on possible excesses by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Rich Schwartz, former chief counsel for the Church Committee, on November 18, 1975, you testified before the Senate Committee to share the staff's findings on an investigation of FBI intelligence activities. We're going to show a clip of you reading an anonymous letter that the FBI sent to Martin Luther King. Let's watch.
The Bureau went so far as to mail anonymous letters to Dr. King and his wife, which were mailed shortly before he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and finishes with this suggestion. King, there is only one thing left for you to do. You know what it is. You have just 34 days in which to do it. This exact number has been selected for a specific reason. It has definite practical significance. It was 34 days before the award. You are done.
Give us some context for what we just saw. Why was the FBI looking into the activities of Martin Luther King?
Well, right after I made that statement, Fritz Mondale, who was really the hero of the committee on the FBI side, everybody was a hero, but he was a special one, he asked me a question.
If I can interrupt, that was taken by Dr. King to mean a suggestion for suicide, was it not?
That's our understanding, Senator.
And the answer was, it was intended, and it was taken as an effort by the King family and the King associates like Andy Young to get him to commit suicide. Hoover hated King. J. Edgar Hoover hated King. Hoover had a negative view of what were then called Negroes. Indeed, on the very afternoon of King's I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C., in the bowels of the FBI's office, they resolved to destroy Martin Luther King. And they set out to do that in lots of ways. They persuaded the Kennedy brothers to agree to wiretapping of King and King's close associates. They did that, we later discovered, by exaggerating the role of an advisor to King, his closest white advisor, Stanley Levison, who had been a member of the Communist Party, but who left the party and the party turned against him. But what the FBI told John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy was that he was a member of the Communist Party and a close advisor of King, and they wanted to get the wiretaps. They then obtained, or they didn't have to obtain permission. Under the rules then, the FBI could put a bug in anybody's house, in anybody's bedroom, and they put bugs in hotel rooms that King was going to use, and they made recordings from that and then sent those to King with the letter.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson. For those of you who are new to the show, the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce fact where we find that so many people are working on fiction. It's based on the premise that the past is never dead, because the present moment is always rooted in the past. I always like to say that the soil that nourished the present moment is the past. And if the information that is false that we get about our past, so will be the present moment and the decision makings that you need to make accurate type of choices will also be based on false information. So knowing the past is very important. And it's only through an accurate telling of the history of our experience as people of African descent in America can we actually critique the mistakes and misconceptions that are present in that you find now in the present moment. And that's why I do this show, to continue to give you accurate information. It might not always be present, it might not be pleasant, but it is based on facts. And I always do my research. This part of the two-part series, the last time I introduced you to the FBI director who initiated through his assistant director, Sullivan, this thing called the Cointelpro Program. And the Cointelpro Program, Cointelpro stands for Counterintelligence Program. In other words, it was a program that was established back in the 50s to do surveillance and other things that were not really legal by the FBI to maintain white supremacy. J. Edgar Hoover, as I talked about in the previous show, part one of this series, dealt with. This is public record. You can find it. I have a book here that I want you, that's my personal copy, but I got an image of it I'll put up on the screen. It's called the Cointelpro Papers. Actually, it's the papers that were found in 1971, and that's how people knew about this program. During the 60s and 50s, nobody even knew about it. I don't even think some of the senators or the president, Johnson, who was a friend of J. Edgar Hoover and his people, who was trying to push the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He talked to J. Edgar Hoover and told him what he was trying to do and how he wanted. And Johnson was the type of person that would twist arms, get people to do what he wants. And he actually recorded it. A lot of the conversations of his calls are also on file. That same recording system that's in the Oval Office is the one that brought down Nixon in 1973 and 74, when he talked about the the Watergate system and the recordings that he was having with his people. But that same recording system was in Johnson's office, and those recordings of him talking to Martin Luther King, to J. Edgar Hoover, to other people, about this. So this is not based on some kind of nonsense. It's based on historical fact and public record. And this is a book that has all those papers that were discovered in a office in Media, Pennsylvania. Let's go on to this. Now, this is a newspaper article on the 9th of March, 1971. Okay, which talks about another breaking. Other than the Watergate, there was this big breaking, which you don't hear too much about, but it did have a big effect on how Americans viewed the American government. Okay, and how the FBI and other agencies violated many citizens' right to by doing the thing they did during the civil rights movement and things like, especially black people and Malcolm X and all these other folks that were doing their thing to get black people their rights under the law. Even though for 100 years prior, we were supposed to be American citizens, according to the 14th Amendment. We were freed by the 13th. We were supposed to become citizens by the 14th Amendment, and then we were given the right to vote by the 15th Amendment. But why did we need a civil rights movement 100 years later, from the late 1860s to the 1960s? We were still talking about that, and even to this day, we're still talking about our rights as citizens. So why are we still dealing with this if the system is not? One thing I found out in my research that it's very difficult to change status quo. Let's go on to the next image here. Now, this is the office buildings. Now, the people that broke in, they didn't know who they were. It was a mystery for many decades. The Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, and they're the ones who broke into that office that you see in the right, which was a nondescript office building where the FBI had these papers that later became the Cointelpro paper, just as important as the paper that exposed the lies that were told about the Vietnam War, in the 1960s. This was just as important. Their only known action was breaking into the two-man media Pennsylvania office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Media, Pennsylvania is maybe just outside of Philadelphia, like a suburb of Philadelphia. Let's go to the next one. Okay. This tells a little bit of the story. On March 8th, I said that newspaper article was the day after, March 9th. Anti-war activists broke into the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. The group called themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. They stole over 1,000 classified documents. That's what they had in that office. And they exposed it, as you can see. And the Cointelpro Program, and they found out through these paperwork, was a covert operation that ran from 1956, just around the Montgomery boycott, and also what was going on with the Red Scare when they were bringing in all these people, especially writers and all these things with the McCarthy Commission that would run out of Washington, D.C. But we're focused on the civil rights movement and the Montgomery when Martin Luther King came under surveillance through this program. And at the bottom you see the people there was a cab driver, a daycare director, and 2 professors who were part of that group who broke into it. They finally came out, I think, in the late 2014-13. They came, exposed, let people know who they were. Prior to that, there was no clue. They got away scot-free, and the world knew about this program through what they did. Let's go on. Okay, this is just images that you can find in that book that talks about the COINTEL. This is correspondence between the headquarters and agents that were set up. Just like you saw in the video that I started the show with. It showed that the commission that was the committee that was established, the church committee that was established based on this information that you see here. Let's go on. These are much more documents that came out of that office and is found in this book. It's public record. Again, let's go on. Excuse me. Okay, this FBI counterintelligence program, Cointelpro, of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, went all the way up until 70, until they broke into the office in 1971. It was active. As this article said, formed one of the most infamous domestic initiatives in U.S. history, targeting organizations and individuals whom the FBI saw as threatening the racist capitalist status quo. This is an article, okay? I didn't write it. This is the article that I found about that. Now, they used surveillance, misinformation, frame up, and like you saw in that video, in front of that committee, one of the investigators said that they sent a letter just before Martin Luther King got his Nobel Peace Prize, telling them they're looking at him. They did anything to stress that brother out. You don't know how much pressure Martin Luther King was on. When Kennedy was assassinated, I just want to let you know, he was watching, him and his wife were watching the events about Kennedy's assassination. This is from his wife, who said later that he said, "That's going to happen to me." This is when Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Martin Luther King had this premonition that this will happen to him because of this kind of thing that was going by the letters that he was getting, like you saw in that video that came out of the church committee, which was established in 1975. So let's go on to the next image. Okay, again, we're just strictly talking about the FBI. Now, they did it to other groups, okay, including the Black Panthers and other black organizations, SNCC and what have you. So, but I'm focusing on what they did to Brother Martin Luther King also. The FBI did not hesitate to break the laws or violate supposedly constitutionally protected freedoms of speech and association. After Cointelpro director William C. Sullivan, who was assigned by J. Edgar Hoover, concluded in the 1963 memo that Martin Luther King Jr. was the most dangerous Negro in the future of this nation, he wrote, "It may be unrealistic to limit our actions against King to legalistically prove that would stand up in courts, before congressional committees, because they knew what they would do was illegal." And he's saying it right there. We can't go through the legalistic process. We got to go, they convinced themselves that he was some kind of danger to this nation, okay? And they did everything they could to bring him down, and that's what Martin Luther King had to deal with. Many of you don't know that. You're getting this watered-down version of little black boys and little black white girls, or however that ad-lib that he did, which was not part of his speech. His speech was about jobs and freedom. That's what that speech was in 1963 in front of that Lincoln Memorial, on August 28, 1963, March on Washington. Let's go on to the next image. Okay, and this is what I'm saying. The FBI waged an intense war against Martin Luther King. A war. Politics is war without bloodshed, but it can cause bloodshed. War is just politics with bloodshed, as the old saying goes. And America has always been at a political war. That's why I also, before I continue with what you see up on the screen, that America, the Civil War for me and many brothers and sisters never stopped. The shooting war stopped in 1865, but the political war continued on. In some cases, it might be still fighting today in Washington, D.C. There's still a war going on for our rights. Up until his assassination in 1968 and the civil trial in 1999 concluded that forces linked to the state were involved in his murder. They bugged his hotel room, tried to revoke IRS investigations against him. This is stuff they did, and harassed magazines that published articles about him. The Bureau sent him a doctored tape which claimed to prove he had participated in even orgies and prostitutes. The accompanying note read, this is the note that they were talking about in that video earlier at the beginning of this thing. This is what they did to Martin Luther King that everybody's praising and honoring. No, this is what the United States government was doing to him during that period of time, which ended up in his assassination. So come on, let's talk truth about this great man who was just a simple preacher who started a boycott and who put himself at the head of the Southern Christian Leadership Council, and that whole organization was under FBI. And because he was galvanizing black people, just like Marcus Garvey I talked about in part one of this series, was galvanizing black people, 6 million members across the diaspora. They saw Malcolm as that. That was one of the greatest fears of J. Edgar Hoover, was to have a black messiah come into existence. They had to get rid of that because they don't want us to galvanize for some reason. We don't have that right. They could do what they want to do with us, in segregation, hang us, lynch us, and do that. And we ask for our right as citizens. This is what the United States government did. Okay, that's why reparations is a topic today. For another time, though. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. The most brutal attacks, like I was saying, were reserved for Black liberation movement. You know, in 1970, that's the Black Panther Party. That's the Malcolm, Nation of Islam, SNCC, and those types of groups who were all young folks. Okay, we got to remember these were young people. All these movements were pushed forward by college students. You know, those who went down south to register people to vote. Even though we had the 15th Amendment 100 years prior, why were we still having to do that? You had white people who were part of that process too, all right? You had white advisors for Martin Luther King, like in the previous video of last show, we talk about Stanley Livingston, who was a white lawyer who believed in, but he was one time in the 1930s a member of the Communist Party, which he quit, and they were against him. The Communist Party were against him, but J. Edgar Hoover used that to tell Robert Kennedy first, who was the Attorney General before his brother got killed, and then Johnson, that's why they wanted the wiretap, because, you know, Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian leadership were influenced by communists, white communists. And that's the excuse he used. And it was only for 2 months that wiretapping order was given by Robert Kennedy. But once his brother died in 1960, you know, John F. Kennedy died in 1963, J. Edgar Hoover kept that wiretapping and surveillance going until Martin Luther King was assassinated. But he still kept it going again until it was discovered in 1963, okay? Let's go on to the next. So, okay, this is another point. Cointelpro targeted many other notable civil rights leaders. Their action led to the assassination of Malcolm X and drove Assata Shakur out of the country. That's the sister that was sent, that's in Cuba, went to Cuba. I think she's an ancestor now, but it spied on Hollywood, black Hollywood stars, you know, black activists, anybody who stood up and said we had the right to live as American citizens in this country were targeted by this Cointelpro program. It might have even caused the assassination of Fred Hampton by police. There were all kinds of people who were put into the organization to infiltrate it, black people, okay? There was some who worked with the FBI because they were had some goods on them, some evidence against them, and the only way they could not go to jail was to infiltrate, you know, organizations like Malcolm X's and also in the Martin Luther King's organization. So you want to talk about divisiveness is only what we experiencing now with the Republicans and stuff like that? No, this has always been, as long as there have been black people in America, it's always been that way. Let's go on to the next. Okay, this just talks about Watergate to show the environment which happened in 1974. This is the environment that was going on. You had Cointelpro in 1971. You had the Watergate with Nixon issues, in which he was also using government agencies to do things. That's why he would have been impeached. And under this thing, a year later, they started the Church Commission to investigate how our intelligence agencies, including the FBI, were using illegal things to surveil American citizens. Okay, it started with the Watergate in 1974 and Nixon getting out of me and resigning as the president. In that atmosphere, the Church Commission was established. Let's go on. Okay, and this is what happened in 1975. It went on from 1975 to 1977. They did the same thing like the January 6th Commission. They sent investigators out to find out all this thing. Took them 16 or 17 months, 1975 to Okay, it was named the Church Commission after General Senator Frank Church, who became the chairman of it. Okay, the government spying on its own people. Let's go on to the next. What did the Church Committee reveal? That further widening the credibility gap between the government and America. This is, like I said, was a time when America, prior in the 50s, at least Americans, and the early 60s, Americans had faith in the government, at least white America. But it was this stuff that was going on in the mid-70s, divisiveness, again, finding out what was going on with the American government under Nixon and behind the back of Johnson and established by Robert Kennedy, who was also assassinated. This is what they found out. Even the CIA conducted secret operations to overthrow foreign governments. They were going out and doing things illegally in Vietnam and in Iran, all these places during this period of time. Let's go on to the next one. Got a few minutes. And that's why I'm doing this show. I got some videos. I want to reinforce what was going on in the 60s. This is what Martin Luther King was guilty of. Galvanizing. This is images I showed in the first show of black people in Montgomery. This is the Montgomery boycott. Black people listened and galvanized themselves and walked for a year. This went on for a year. There were also rallies in Chicago, in Atlanta, in Mobile, Alabama, the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is what Martin and SNCC and other groups were doing during the 60s. I would think this is just as divisive, even more divisive, in a sense of we talking about our rights. Black people were not docile as some images about them. No, Rosa Parks was going around investigating for the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP led by C.D. Hicks to lynchings that were occurring throughout Alabama and Georgia. You know, she was born in Tuskegee, in Alabama, and she used to sit on the porch with her grandfather, who had a gun, who had to protect the family. And she would say in her autobiography that she would always sit with her. She was 6 years old, sitting on the lap of her grandfather, saying, "Are you going to be shooting any Ku Klux Klaners?" You know, that's what she came out of. Okay, this is these women and black men during that period of time are our heroes. You don't know the names of any of those, but if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be having the rights that you are taking for granted now by not voting. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, this is one of the points I want you to make, that it was not something that was given to you. People died, people sacrificed, people suffered so that you, black man, black woman, and those who claim that what's the reason for voting? Well, the weapon of choice in a democracy is the vote, at the minimum, okay? If you're not even going to do your part to support organizations that help in bird dogging and watching what these people are voting for when they get into Washington, what the congressmen and senators, there's organizations, at least support them financially. Support community activists who are the people that galvanize everybody. You know, we had to deal with this. You saw what was going on after George Floyd time, okay, just in the last couple of years, in the 21st century. You know, the struggle is real. The struggle's still going on now. It was not, so don't, when people say they're surprised of the divisiveness, history will teach you otherwise. But I'll stop it here, and until next time, peace, hotep, bye-bye.